Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1098, written by Itzongaming, the Twilight Zone episode that happened in my room. I was about 16 at the time, and I had just gotten a new TV to put in my room so that I could use the Xbox on it. It came with one remote. I remember specifically because I was very spacey and tended to lose things, so I wanted a second one, just in case. Well, cut to about 3 months later, I lost the remote. I sleep with it on my nightstand, and I don't remember moving it or dropping it or anything, but one day I went to grab it and it wasn't on my nightstand. I looked everywhere for that thing. It was driving me crazy, until a few days later, when I looked in between my bed and the wall. I'd already looked there. At least I thought so, and it was just there. I was absolutely elated, until when I pulled the bed back to actually grab it, 2 remotes fell. Exactly the same brand, same wear on the input and select button. The number 2 was rubbed off on both of them, and what really blew my mind is the batteries were the same mismatch of Duracell and whatever brand it came with. Turned the same amount. Anybody else have a duplication glitch? Case notes for file 1098. The Twilight Zone episode that happened in my room. So duplication glitches where the objects duplicated have specific anomalies or defects. Like you say in this case, the number was rubbed out for number 2, or the batteries were different kinds and they were completely matching in the other one. The object duplicated was an exact copy. So how do you fake that? I mean, you would have to have intimate knowledge of that. If it was a prank, it would be rather elaborate to even go out of your way to buy the exact same batteries and fade out the other button, and even like fading it out in the exact same wake would be difficult. If this is a prank, I mean, it's exceptional quality. But honestly, it's Occam's razor, which is funny because we're dealing with duplication from multiverse events, but simply put, the most likely explanation is probably the correct one. In another world, you lost the remote too. It de-rendered because you weren't looking at it, and then it didn't re-render correctly when you were supposed to look at the spot where it's supposed to be. Instead of rendering over there where it was supposed to, it rendered in a different universe. Yours. And you know, if you think about how much information there is in the nearly infinite copies of our multiverse out there, how many copies of just that one remote there are? In so many other copies of the universe, it's insane. So it de-renders, an error code correction kicks in, restores in the improper universe. Frankly, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often given the vastness of the multiverse, how many things the simulation has to keep track of. Case file number 1099, written by Lee Harris 100. The Day the Universe Saved Me. When I was in school, I had this hippie teacher who would always tell us that the universe can help if you just ask it. She told us one time her daughter had lost something very important, and when she asked the universe to help, she suddenly had a massive pulling feeling towards the sink. She walked over and immediately stuck her hand down into the garbage disposal and pulled the item out in perfect condition. So I think it's total nonsense, of course, but later that day I was searching for a little thin booklet that I really needed for school. I spent 3 hours looking for it and had no luck. Finally, out of frustration, I almost sarcastically said, "I need your help, universe." I immediately walked over to this bookcase filled with books from my stepdad. I had never once used the shelf or any book on it. I grab a random book I've never seen from the middle of a huge pile. I open it to somewhere around page 200, and right there is my booklet, smashed in between the pages. It was incredibly thin, so you couldn't even tell there was anything in there if you looked at it from a different angle. I'm sure there's a good explanation, but it's been well over a decade, and I still remember the incredibly freaky vibe I got the moment I saw the book. Case notes are file 1099, The Day the Universe Saved Me. So I don't think freaky vibes necessarily need to apply to this. I don't think it's anything malicious. I think being open to the universe helping you to unlock subconscious pathways, otherwise dormant or suppressed. That's all that's happening. It's not magic in my mind or even mysticism. It's just information and getting to it, decoding it, transmitting it to the conscious manifestation of our existence from our subconscious. That last part might be the hardest barrier to break through though, especially as adults. For most of us, we just feel this information as intuition. Sometimes people hear that inner voice boom and guide them as needed. Like in the case of the story where someone just heard a voice saying, which paper to take when they were taking an exam, something along those lines. So it's not that we reshape the universe itself to our will exactly, it's like activating information hacks in a game, wall hacks. It tells you where you need to be going or what you need to be doing or where things are. But it's just as things are. It's not like manifesting a book from thin air. It was just saying where it was. Now it is odd that your booklet was in some random book that you never went into. Why was it there? Was that the glitch, that it de-rendered and re-rendered incorrectly in the book? Where you never would have found it? Maybe that's the actual glitch. And the other thing, asking the universe, is just, asking for help and it shall be received. The closest reference I can make would be taking an NZT pill from the movie Limitless. I freaking love that movie. And the show was great too. Damn shame it was cancelled. I think it was because it promoted drug use, but I mean, not really. How people interact with someone on a level of intellect that is beyond anything that can be comprehended unless you are on that level too. And I just love shows where there's a central protagonist that is incredibly smart, like The Mentalist or Sherlock. It's just so much fun. Case file number 1100, written by Anonymous. Entwined in Laos, a story of fate. Back in 2011, my significant other and I were backpacking in Laos, and we ended up in that very isolated village called Muang Nuai. To get there, you need to take a 3-hour bus from Luang Prabang to Nong Kia, then a 1-hour ride upriver on a fisherman's boat. There are no roads to reach the village, and once there, there's no internet, no mobile network, and electricity is only for a couple hours in the evenings. It's a beautiful area though, mountainous with caves to visit, riverside beach, etc. Although not completely off the map, it's a place where few travelers go, and it happened to be off-season when we went there, so there were no more than 10 or 15 visitors in the whole village at the time we were there. In the evening, everyone returns from the treks, cave crawls and boat rides, and gather in the only bar/hostel of the village on an elevated wooden terrace by the river. The night falls, and little by little, groups merge and everyone ends up sitting on big pillows, sipping cocktails and talking about life and travels like they're old buddies, whereas no one knew each other just a few hours before. To this day, this is one of my favorite backpacking memories, and what came soon after made it even more memorable. So there's this Australian woman, Ronnie, who took the same boat as us to get there. She's a bit odd, something off about her. She tells people how she was diagnosed with a terminal illness but made a miraculous recovery, and now she's traveling everywhere in Asia with the funds that her friends had collected for what was supposed to be her last trip, bucket list. Then there was this other Australian guy, Ken, who arrived one day after us. He is quite the traveler, and quite the talker too. There are also Spanish, American, and French people. At one point, someone asks Ken if he's married. He starts joking about it, but then he proceeds to tell the story of how one day, about 20 years ago, his wife, who was from New Zealand, just vanished. She left him without warning, a note or anything. They got in touch later to arrange the divorce, but Ken said he never saw her again, and he never heard anything from her after the divorce. He told the story with humor, but you could tell that this had been a devastating experience for him. At that point, Ronnie, with a very calm voice, inquires, "Was her name Karen?" I look at Ken and see his face decompose, going from brash and confident to livid. The place falls silent. "Yes," he replies. "How do you know her name? Do you know her?" Ronnie proceeds to explain how, when she heard this story, she realized that she knew the exact same story but from the wife's perspective. She had met Karen at one point in her life. She described her physically to Ken, and it was an exact match. At this point, we were all looking at each other with big eyes, speechless, stupefied by the scene we were witnessing. So then comes the mega what the fluck moment. Ken asks if she knows what Karen has been up to since they met, and Ronnie replies, "She's dead," with a dead flucking serious tone and face. I swear to God, although I had quite a few drinks, I sobered up instantly, like I was feeling danger. No one was speaking. Everyone was staring. Ken was absolutely stunned. At that point, I was half expecting to see an alien ship come out of the sky or that Ronnie would turn into a demon and eat us alive. She gave some more details about Karen's passing. It was a car accident. But unfortunately, I don't remember much else of what was said after that. Soon after, the bar owner was closing and asked everyone else to leave, and so we called it a night and all went to our rooms, dumbfounded. What are the odds of something like that happening? Case notes are file 1100, Entwined in Laos, A Story of Fate. Sounds like a cool adventure, but no electricity at night or the day? Just like a few hours? Hard to imagine being able to function there. I need air conditioning to sleep. Sounds like a very cool little village though. Off adventuring for the day, coming back to the tavern to discuss the day's journeys, like living an adventurer's life centuries ago, or like a D&D adventure. So I kinda laughed out loud when you described the surreal otherworldliness of the coincidence, where you thought, oh, demons or aliens might be involved and they're just gonna appear any second now. Who knows, right? But yes, this is an extraordinary embodiment of the saying, what a small world it is. The world is unfathomably massive. So it makes you wonder how people can be so connected, entwined, to leading very similar roads traveled, when technically they're separated by enormous distances, or they could be. I think the bonds of love extend deeper than we can see. For quantum immortality, dying together and being transposed to the same universe together because of that soul entanglement, you could say, I think that applies. And now time for the quote of the day. Since it is so likely that children will meet cruel enemies, let them at least have heard of brave knights and heroic courage. Otherwise, you are making their destiny not brighter, but darker. C.S. Lewis. The world is a beautiful place, an immense place, an incredible place, but it is filled with light and darkness. If you only expose your children to the good parts, the sunshine and daisies and pizza and chocolate chips, that's good, expose them to that. But you need to make sure that they're aware that there are bad people in the world. There are monsters, in the colloquial sense. Not speaking of demons or anything like that. I'm just saying people that will try to manipulate them or take advantage of them or just harm them directly physically. To expose them to stories where there are these evils that are stood up against and fought bravely is so important. I think you want your children to have that brave spirit and also be wise in knowing when to fight battles and when to retreat. Having that base level of courage baked in is very important. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.